But do you think all companies have a soul?
I mean, maybe, at least I would claim that all companies have a real identity that has integrity. That, in some sense, the only reason why, here's how I think about companies become successful when they're doing something useful for someone out there. And in there is inherent goodness. There is inherent sense of pride in the people who are doing it. And somehow capturing it, recapturing it. Because in some sense, I always say this, what happens to organizations, whether it was in ancient Greece or in modern Silicon Valley, it's one thing, which is if you're successful, hubris sets in, right, and you make mistakes. And the question is, how do you make sure that you don't fall, for those, and then you somehow get back to that story of what created you in the first place, what made you successful in the first place. I think, empathy, you could say, is very good in the personal life, very important, but I think it's central to business. If you sort of say innovation comes, or when you want to build a product or a service that is going to meet the unmet, unarticulated needs of customers, your best shot of being able to do that is to have that deep sense of empathy. So that, that ability to see others. And that's why I think that it's so important for us to not separate out what we think is important at work, what we think is important for us in life. And if you can somehow bring the two things together, and empathy is one such very powerful thing that I've found to be very useful for me.
Some people say empathy is on the wane.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting thing because we're more connected than we ever have been before. But we're less empathetic in some ways because our connection is technological as opposed to human. Do you agree with that?
I mean, there is a real issue of being completely, all human interaction being mediated by technology. I think there is a real issue there, which is...
Issue, good, bad, indifferent,
I think
or just...
it's bad if overdone. Even the classic thing that we all know, in fact, let's face it, I mean, at my home, when we are having dinner, there are no phones, there are no devices. And I think it's important. It's sort of a very key thing for us as a family to come together, to be able to look each other in the eye, to be able to listen to each other, to have that connection, which I think is what is so important for us. It gives us the source of inspiration, the energy, the courage. So I think that, but at the same time, that doesn't mean we should all sort of be troglodytes and sort of not use technology. If anything, I think technology can also help make connections. I'm not even denying that. But as a tech CEO, I think, I'm optimistic about technology, but at the same time, I'm grounded on the unintended consequences of overuse of any tech.
So I have to ask, because you talked about soul of a company, and it led to soul of technology, I want to pivot to AI, artificial intelligence, because the big fear with artificial intelligence is the soul goes away and the computer runs the world, and it has no empathy, and it has no emotion. Why are some people wrong about that? And how important is artificial intelligence and machine learning going to be to the future of our society and the future of Microsoft?
First of all, I think the defining technology of our times is clearly going to be AI and machine learning. I would come at it in two ways. One is, let's just think about what AI can do for us as we sit here in 2018. In terms of, in fact, bringing more people to fully participate in our society, in our economy. One of the things that I'm very passionate about is accessibility. And if you think about some of the AI breakthroughs and what I'm seeing today, because of what is possible, we incorporated into Word and into Edge and OneNote, all of our tools that people use to read, something called learning tools. So anybody who has dyslexia, right, can now read. They improve their reading performance. And especially the thing that is so important about reading performance in primary school is it defines everything going forward. So AI can, in fact, to really make it possible for someone with disabilities to fully participate. We worked with, in fact, Steve Gleason, and now in Windows we put in something called the eye gaze technology. So if you have ALS, the only use you have is of your eye gaze, and you can use that to type and communicate. We have even done magical things with computer vision with this thing called Seeing AI. Or the Xbox controller. One of the things that I feel so, we just launched it, is the Xbox adaptive controller that allows anybody to play games, and there's sort of this thing called the co-pilot in Xbox. So it's magical. So technology, and particularly AI technology, can in fact be used to get more people to get benefits, to participate, get the economic opportunity they deserve. Now, having said all that, going back to your point about soul, and whether it's the technological displacement, which is a real challenge, which I think is a solvable thing, because there's always, if there's only return on capital and no return on labor, I think history has taught us that there are solutions that are policy-based. But the thing about what I worry about, and what I need to, as a technology CEO, do something about, is how do we make AI a more robust engineering field? That's what I think about. Think about it. When a bridge falls today, we look at it and say, wow, that's like, what are the construction faults? We can go back, study it, we can analyze it, the engineering depth we have to be able to analyze what caused any bridge to fall. We need that level of rigor if we're going to use something like AI, like bridges in the real life. That means if they're going to impact lives, you need to be, for example, bias. You've got to know that you're introducing some AI model that is fundamentally not biased. And these are unsolved problems.
So there need to be rules of engagement? Do they need to be universal rules, international rules? How should that work?
It's a great question. So I think maybe 2 years ago, in that other book that is available to you as well, we tried to sort of put this all together. I first started by saying, let us have some design principles which can guide us. So for example, at Microsoft, we are very much grounded on the fact that with AI, human is in the loop. So I believe abdicating responsibility for AI and its decision-making too early is very dangerous. So you got to design systems. If you're creating AI systems that are making automated decisions, then the person who is building that system is in the loop, so therefore they have the responsibility to go figure out how to make sure that the AI system is going to make the right decisions. It's something that is, you can go introspect, understand, and if it's made a mistake, can you go back and fix the mistake? So yes, I think there's design principles. There is, I think, regulation that's definitely needed.
Does the world agree with you? Like if we're in China and have this conversation, would they say, yes, let's collaborate with Microsoft and America on this? Is there consensus?
I think that AI ethics is definitely something that is universally recognized, whether it's in China, whether it's in the United States, whether it's in Europe. And that's where I think we will have to do our best work as a global community, so that we can take the benefits of these amazing, amazing breakthroughs in technologies, but have an understanding that these technologies can have unintended consequences. So I'm, quite frankly, an optimist in that we are getting a fresh start. Unlike the climate or in many other places, the understanding of the unintended consequences is better, while we are still in the very early stages. I'm not one of those who thinks that we are at the stage of AI where we are going to have AGI anytime soon. We have some magical breakthroughs, but we are so far from common sense reasoning that I think we have time on our side if we focus.
Some people say this revolution that we're going through right now, this fourth industrial revolution, is a jobless revolution. And technology is getting whacked on this, saying that technology is taking away jobs. It's not globalization, it's technology. Is that right?
Here's a couple of things. One is a little bit of what I said about, hey, let's first recognize that some of this technology can in fact make it possible for many of us to find jobs. So for that kid with dyslexia to get better reading, get better at reading, will have better outcomes and get a job. Or someone with visual impairment to be able to fully participate at Microsoft because of the tool. So that's sort of one piece. The second piece is clearly, if any technological displacement happens, the first thing we should do is do a fantastic job of what I would call finding the new jobs that they can be qualified for or get the retraining for. And this is one of the places where I'm very optimistic about taking, let's say, the LinkedIn signal. One of the reasons why I was excited about LinkedIn is it's really an economic graph. The ability to see what jobs are out there, what skills are required as a real-time feedback cycle. From what I've learned, a lot of reskilling programs have this one foundational disadvantage, which is they're done in a vacuum, which is you don't have a real economic feedback cycle. So I think we will have to, some of the social programs, programs inside companies, organizations like LinkedIn will all have to contribute, but we will probably have to do some of the best work of essentially creating that marketplace mechanism for retraining, because that's going to be real, which is many of us will have to retrain ourselves multiple times perhaps in our professional careers to be able to be relevant as technology shifts.
Let's pretend it's your last day and you're closing the door behind you. What do you hope to have accomplished?
It's a great one. And in fact, I've thought about that because Steve got me thinking about it. He says there's only one thing that you got to be thinking about, which is, did the person who comes after you, will they achieve more success than you? And as long as you think about that's the place you leave, then you've got something right. But you know, it was a great way. Like I look at it, a lot of leaders sometimes sort of look at it and sort of say, oh yeah, I came in and I fixed everything. And he says, be suspicious of it. You know, because in some sense, someone will come through the door someday. Always think about what is it that that person can do. Even if they said that about you, where they're more successful. Celebrate your successor's success was actually a great sort of lesson, at least I inferred from how sort of, you know, even Steve talked to me about his own time at Microsoft.